Good morning, everybody. Oh, what's up? I'm Bart Winkler, the Bart Winkler Show. Joining me today, let's get right into it. Andy Herman with the Pack-A-Day podcast, fellow Blue Wire colleague. So I believe you're the first Blue Wire colleague that I've had on. And you could find Andy on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. The Pack-A-Day podcast, if you know me, you probably know Andy. I mean, he's done this kind of all on your own, and it's come to this thing. And I was just reading a Q&A that you did, but you've done it every day. You guys have done it every day for years now. And so just before we get into it, as it's the fourth week of this podcast, congratulations to you for everything you've done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is awesome. Going to enjoy talking to you, and I'm glad I have another Blue Wire colleague in the Wisconsin area. So that's always fun, and congratulations on your new gig. But yeah, it's been crazy. The team I have is absolutely phenomenal, which makes everything so much easier on my end. But yeah, 365 days a year, never missed a day, going back, I think, over 4 years now. So it's been pretty incredible.
And what a time to pick to cover this team, where you've seen the LaFleur era kind of become what it is. And now we're here at 3-2 heading into week 6. You know, you look at the team, they're 3-2. Okay. And if we mapped it out, there's different ways that they could have been 3-2. Sure. And even if they were 2-3 or 3-2, or had they beat the Giants there at the end, maybe, you know, some of this is a little different because they'd be 4-1, but I think the problems would be the same. I don't think the record is necessarily what people are upset about. What people are upset about is how they're playing. And this is an interesting thing right now, because I've spent a lot of time on Rodgers and trying to psychoanalyze him and his, you know, the way he thinks is affecting the offense, which leads me to think about LaFleur. It's the fourth year those guys together. It's their senior year, I'm calling it. So there should be more of an understanding. And I can spend all that time on that. I can spend an hour. I can spend 4 hours on it. And then someone can say, whoa. But also the defense, because the defense, you've got all these. I mean, we'll get to the defense in a second, because that, I think it's a lot. Starting with Rodgers and starting with LaFleur, here's where I'm coming from Rodgers. I think that he is the back-to-back MVP, 4-time MVP. He's one of the greatest players ever. I think in LaFleur's offense, or even just the way football is in 2022, you don't need to throw a 50-yard touchdown on every play. But for LaFleur, like, you also don't let Rodgers do that. So we know what the problems are on the team. Have you, when you've seen them play via tape and all that, is there a way like that it can be better? Is there a way for this offense, from what you've seen, that it's close, or are there massive changes, do you think, that need to happen inside those meeting rooms to then see differently on the field?
Yeah, so there's, like you said, we could probably discuss all of this at extreme length.
That's why I asked you a 2.5 minute question.
Exactly. I think there's a lot that we can dig into this. I think offensively, clearly there's an adjustment period to some of these new weapons, and I think there's a little bit of accident forgiveness there. But I do think that there is an avenue for success for this offense. And frankly, I thought Matt LaFleur, and there's no games won in press conferences, right? But I thought Matt LaFleur in his press conference after the Giants game on Monday was as good as you can be in that situation, and really answering the questions from a process-oriented standpoint. Now, I think we can all agree that if Aaron Jones doesn't touch the ball a certain amount of times, and you're not getting your best playmakers the ball, just period, much less with an opportunity to succeed, you haven't really done your job as a play caller, and you haven't really done your job from a game planning and scheme standpoint. And I think that is clearly one of the big takeaways from this. And I think the frustrating thing is, it's not the first time that it's happened. In fact, it happened against Minnesota. They came back. Yes, we got to get Aaron Jones the ball more. You get Aaron Jones the ball more, things look great. And then all of a sudden we forget about Aaron Jones again. And that seems to be a recurring issue really since the day that Aaron Jones has been drafted, which is just mind boggling. Right. So I think that's a key. But I do think that the process that Rodgers and LaFleur are going through is sound process. I think them wanting to push the ball down the field when they've got single high looks, when they have receivers. Romeo Doubs won on the outside a ton in this game, like a ridiculous amount of times. Like there should have been 3 or 4 explosives to Romeo. The offensive line didn't block it up a couple times. Rodgers didn't pull the trigger a couple times. Rodgers missed a couple times. There's just some opportunities there that they missed. That's going to unfortunately happen. I do feel like a part of this, and I'm not excusing everything. In fact, I just did a full episode on how the coaching needs to improve. But I do think a part of this is like, Green Bay had the right process. They played the right poker hand, and they got beat, by a lesser hand. And sometimes that just happens. You play the percentages, and sometimes the percentages lose. I think they need to do a better job of making sure in the right situations, like when the opposing defense has just gone down your throat on 4 straight drives, and the last thing that you can have is a 3 and out. I think they have to do a better job of understanding that situation and making sure that no matter what, they cannot have a 3 and out in that situation, and they have to take some time off the clock, and they have to let their defense rest a little bit. I think that there's some egregiousness to that. But if you look at the process on those plays and what they were trying to develop and what Matt LaFleur talked about the day after, I don't hate the philosophy. I don't hate how they were going about it and trying to take advantage of a situation that was there. So I think the process is actually sound. I think they need to do a better job of making sure that that process includes Aaron Jones a lot more. And I think they need to execute. But I do think we're slightly being a reactor to the results rather than the process. And sometimes the process can be good and the results can be bad. I think that was this game. To your point from earlier, if that was just this game, I think you're like, okay, that's going to happen from time to time, but it's been too much for 5 weeks now, even in some of the quote unquote ugly wins, that you're going to have to change some things up and do some things different. And one of the things I need to see a little bit more is like, how can we get some players open through the scheme of the play that doesn't have to be 20, 30 yards down the field? Where are some of those crossing routes that every team is running against Green Bay with a insane level of success? How can we get Christian Watson, even if it's a shallow cross, how can we just get the ball in his hands with his explosiveness?
Or
I think
pass it to him like not behind the line of scrimmage.
Exactly.
They did it one time and they haven't done it since.
Exactly. So I think those are some of the things that have to be better. And it can't be like the solution can't just be a 40-yard pass down the field every time when you see single high coverage. There has to be better solutions to that overall. But I don't hate the process, and I don't think they're quite as far off offensively as it's felt the last couple weeks.
I think that, so just to talk to you here for a little bit, I could spend a lot of time on Aaron Rodgers. In fact, I have spent a lot of time on Aaron Rodgers. So if you're looking for more, Bart tries to figure out the brain of Aaron Rodgers, I might go listen to a different podcast, because when talking to you, I want to talk about LaFleur for a second.
Sure.
Here's my problem with LaFleur. I'm trying to figure out if he's a good coach. My problem with LaFleur is he has gone through things now enough times where I don't like seeing it happen again. I thought early on in his tenure, they lost some playoff games. Maybe that was a big moment for him. He's a first-time head coach. Okay, you learn that different atmosphere. But the playoff losses have been similar. The week 1 last year against the Saints, and then they win 7 in a row. Great. The same thing happened this year. And then he comes out there and he says, I need to be better. I let my guys down. I think after the Patriots game, that was a game that got away from them too, and they're lucky to have won it. It was very similar to me like the Giants game, where the last thing I wanted to hear from LaFleur was, I have to be better, all this kind of stuff. And while I did a better job on Monday, that was like his initial reaction. It seems like LaFleur should be at the point where once you've done it, you like, it just seems like it's repeating itself. And I think that there can be a shelf life to that. Like, yeah, LaFleur's had a great career. No one's saying to put him on the hot seat, but the analysis is Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid got these Eagles to the NFC Championship game 4 straight years, and then at some point it's just not working. We're a long way from that with LaFleur, I think, but I need to start to see some growth instead of the same season over and over and over, and that's what concerns me, is I don't feel like I'm seeing that growth.
Yeah, it's one of the things I talked about in the episode about LaFleur and how the coaching needs to get better. Is learning from mistakes is a huge part of coaching, right? And you mentioned the first week last year against the Saints. Well, clearly that's not going to happen again when you face a divisional foe against the Minnesota Vikings. There's no way that's going to happen again. And it happens again. They struggle in his first year going West Coast, and they've got that. I can't remember if it was the Chargers first and then the 49ers after, if it was reversed, but I think it was 49ers first maybe. And they completely crap the bed on the West Coast, and then they go to the West Coast later in the season. You're like, clearly that's not going to happen again. And it happens again. And then the travel, I think, affects them a little bit against the Giants in London this week. And we've seen them struggle.
Yeah, if they ever go more than 2 hours on a plane, it's over.
Been an issue.
This team can't figure it out.
So they haven't learned from that mistake. 3 straight playoff series, as you mentioned, and back-to-back years. They don't perform up to expectations. And really, in a way, they no-showed against San Francisco in that game. Travel may be an issue again. Tampa, they kind of no-showed the first good chunk of that game until they kind of built their way back into it later in the game. And then basically certainly offensively and special teams, completely no-show in the divisional round against the 49ers. That's been a recurring mistake. We talked about Aaron Jones. Week 1, you don't get Aaron Jones involved. They're like, all right, we're going to fix it. Clearly, that's not going to happen again. Against the Giants, he disappears for huge stretches again. So there's these recurring issues. I even like second half adjustment, right? The Todd Bowles makes a phenomenal second half adjustment against the Packers, goes press man, single high, challenges everything, and Green Bay doesn't have an answer for it. All right, clearly, if that happens again, you're going to have a better plan for if a team does it. Wayne Martindale did the exact same thing. They didn't play that way in the first half. Second half, they make the adjustment, ton of press man, single high. Clearly, they're going to be prepared for it because they weren't against Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles, and they didn't get points in the second half against Wink either. So it's learning from those mistakes that I think has been a bit of an issue. And quite frankly, it has to be better.
With the defensive side of the ball, I look at that. Like I was talking about this summer, how there will be time, and it could still be true, but there will be times when you call your loved one. I think of back to 2010, the Super Bowl year after the game, after they won. And I called my dad and I cried to him and I said, thank you. I mean, you could have but you put me down Packer path. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I was saying that this defense will be so good that there will be multiple games you call whoever was a Packer influencer in your life and you will thank them because you will have some sort of defense that you never saw. And I just have to look at the depth chart. The two deep, whatever. All these guys, Quay Walker, I almost said Sam Shields, Rasul Douglas, Jair, you know the guys, Kenny Clark, Rashawn has been terrific. This defense on paper is so good. It seems like they found the one coordinator who is going to screw that up. So I don't know what needs to change there besides Andy, everything.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. I think one of the things that's most disappointing is when Joe Barry came last year to the team for one of the first times, and I know the results weren't always there, but there were stretches, especially towards the beginning of the season. I think the game against the 49ers in the divisional round as well is a great example. There were times that for the first time, completely different than the Mike Pettin system, where it looked like 11 guys were playing cohesive football on the same page, actually moving as a team. And I was legitimately excited about, okay, I know things aren't always going to be perfect. There's a new defensive coordinator. There's a couple gaps here and there, but I see team defense and team cohesion, and it was never a thing when Mike Pettin was coordinating. So I was legitimately excited. And for whatever reason, so far through 5 games, that has gone completely out the window. There is not 11 guys playing team defense. There are 11 individuals out there playing defense and trying to do their own thing. And that's a big problem. We've seen the edges get abused, specifically against the New England Patriots, where you're not setting an edge and funneling everything back to the inside. We're seeing constant miscommunications. We're not seeing people rallying to the football, tackling. Devondre Campbell all of a sudden forgot how to tackle, which is just unbelievable. It's completely unexpected. And you're also seeing players not playing up to the level of their expectations. Now, a piece of that is certainly how this defense is being played. I've said it all week. Defenders like attacking. They like being the ones that are the aggressors. They are the ones that want to set the tempo and set the tone. And this defense right now is the complete antithesis of that. This is, we're going to sit back. We're going to let them paper cut us. We don't think they can paper cut us to death. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the game, you're bleeding out. And that, it was very clear against the Giants. There's never, I don't care if they're playing the Buffalo Bills. I don't care if they're playing Joe Montana, Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas. Aikman and Emmitt Smith. I don't care who they're playing. The greatest show on turf. This defense should not have a 5-possession stretch where they allow points on every single drive. It cannot happen. And it is, I don't even know the adjective that I want to use, but it is completely unacceptable for a Danny Dimes-led offense that's got an okay offensive line.
It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great word for it. That's a fantastic word for it. But you can't let that offense with no wide receivers, with guys they called up from the practice squad during the week, do that 5 straight times. It is effing terrible, as you said. So, they've got to get it cleaned up. They've got to play a more aggressive brand of football. I remember very clearly a situation where some of the defenders went into Mike Pettine's office and said, we need to be the ones that are attacking. We need to play a different brand of football. And things kind of got a little bit better after that. But there needs to be a similar situation with Joe Barry where this team needs to play a more attacking brand of football. And right now they're not. I
try to not work blue, but when it comes to Joe Barry and the Packers, I did do that once. Me and a coworker, our boss was so bad that we went to her and we're like, you suck. It was weird. It is weird when that has to happen. But again, This defense, they have guys on this team, and I'm going to steal my buddy Ryan Horvath's point, who joins me on Fridays, because he had said that Goody must be the worst GM in the league. Now, that might be hyperbolic. However, we're talking so much about Rodgers. Like, they have built this defense. They have not given Rodgers weapons this whole time. You have built this incredible defense where you spend first-round picks on these guys. And so I think the defense, like, he's not the worst GM in the league. I think this is more of a coaching thing. But when you're spending all that time on Quay Walker, the linebacker who we've needed for so long, on, keeping Kenny Clark, keeping Jair. The Packers have a guy like Jair Alexander that's incredible. Having Campbell come over, having Douglas come over, finding a way to keep them. Rashawn Gary, drafting him, staying the course with him turning into one of the best pass rushers in the game. How do you spend all that time only to then lose to Danny Dimes and almost Bailey Zappi? That's the problem. So I hope that where they're at right now, because they're not going to fire Joe Barry yet. I mean, they might say, but they won't do it in the middle of the season. So I'm worried that the leap from where they're at to where they need to be, I'm worried it might be too far gone.
Yeah, so let's start with the Brian Gutekunst point, right? Because clearly, I tweeted this out as well. If you've got, and we everyone knows this by now, but like Kenny Clark, first-round pick, Dean Lowry, significant free agent money to re-sign him that they gave him, Jerron Reed, free agent money. You've got Rashawn Gary, first-round pick, Preston Smith, significant free agent money, Devondre Campbell, significant free agent money, Devontae Wyatt, first-round pick, Quay Walker, first-round pick, Jair Alexander, first-round pick, Eric Stokes, first-round pick, Rasul Douglas, significant free agent money, Amos, free agent money, and then Savage, first-round pick. Like, every one of these players on this defense is either a fairly significant free agent signing or a first-round pick. So there's one of two things. Either your evaluation of the talent up front was not good and sound, and you put the wrong picks and the wrong money into the wrong people, or you didn't, and you got those evaluations right, and you are either not running the right defense to take advantage of those players, or the coaching just isn't good enough and the scheme just isn't good enough to make it so that should be one of the top defenses, because you are putting the investments into that defense that, with all the time, effort, and energy you have put into it, it should be a top 5 defense without question. And if it's not there, then you have to realize, like, what process went wrong? Is it the coaching or is it the evaluation? So I think we're going to find that out. I think, and maybe that does take a coaching change at some point to figure out, all right, is it just coaching? But there's no way that this defense can be that bad against a Danny Dimes Giants team. And I think the other thing, and to your point, is that the formula for this team, there seems to be, and maybe I'll get proven wrong on this, there seems to be only one formula. If we want to talk, if you told me like at the end of the year, the Packers had, let's just say it, like, it seems ridiculous at this point, but if they won the Super Bowl, let's just say we're fast forwarding and you told me that the Packers won the Super Bowl, there's only one formula for that to work that I can think of. And that's that this defense plays not good, not really good, but they have to be great. Like, I don't think a greatest show on turf, explosive Pat Mahomes, level offense is coming to Green Bay anytime soon. They could be sufficient. They could, end up being a solid to good offense. I think that's feasible, but like they're not going to win because of their offense. They're certainly not going to win because of their special teams. If you told me they were successful in January and February, it will be because they were extremely successful on defense. The offense did their part. The special teams did their part. And we're not close to that right now, which I think is the most disconcerting issue through 5 weeks. And I think that's why there is a slight bit of panic from Packer fans and those covering the team, because there is only one formula and it doesn't look anything close to where that formula needs to be right now.
We got this defense on paper. That's great. You do have Aaron Rodgers. You have a receiver core, which I think is coming along fine. And you've got 2 running backs, including Aaron Jones, who continues to be the best kept secret in the Packers' own building for some stupid reason. I think that the reason there's a lot of people upset, this team can win a Super Bowl. This team can win a Super Bowl. And it's just like the way that they're playing right now, it does seem so far away. All right. So with all that said, they do have the Jets this weekend. Mm-hmm. I thought Jair's comment was so innocent that the way that it got blown up by Rodgers, I pissed about him at that too, but Rodgers can blink like twice in an hour or twice in a minute, and not 3 times, and I'll be pissed at him for some reason. This is the way I am. Packers against the Jets. I can see a loss, but I think where a lot of people are going to go and where I'm going to go is I could see a loss. I could rationally see a loss. No, they'll win by 9 or 10, and that's where I'm going to end up. But we haven't been like given any reason why that's possible, so I'll still take the Packers to win, but maybe by 5, 6. But even I don't know. I'm really struggling with. I know it's just one dumb pick no one cares about, but I have no idea.
No, I'm kind of with you, and I think just the travel back from London and how like they played an overtime game 2 weeks ago against the Patriots.
And the headline. Do you see my tweet? What the headline would be?
No,
if they lose, the headline's going to be. If they lose, the headline will be jet lagged.
Oh, that is really good.
So that's why I think they're going to lose, actually, yeah.
The headline might be worth the loss in and of itself, but
I would agree.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. But they obviously don't play great against the Patriots, have an overtime game that always is going to take it out of you a little bit. Then they have to go, 4 full quarters of physical football. That defense is on the field a ton. And a game in London where you travel all the way to London, have to travel all the way back. Now you've got kind of this pesky Jets team that just won a big game against Miami, put up 40 points, and they're all energized and hyped up. That's like the kind of the last team that you want to see right now. And I do think everyone is kind of just the way that people think the Packers are just going to win this week is very similar to the way that everyone just thought Aaron Rodgers was going to drive the team down the field and score 7 points to tie the game last week against the Giants. This just isn't like, you can't take those things for granted with this team. This isn't that good of a team where you can just be like, that happened, but they'll be fine. Like they're going to have to work. This is going to be a tough, pesky Jets team. And I'm kind of with you. I do think that ultimately they bounce back. One of the things that this team has been fantastic at is bouncing back from losses in the Matt LaFleur era. They haven't lost back-to-back regular season games in his career, but like at some point, like that's going to happen, right? It would be stupid if he didn't have back-to-back losses. Like it's going to happen at some point. And this feels like one of those games where anything could happen. I think they win. I'm with you kind of like by 5 or 6 points. Maybe they get a late score and it looks a little bit more lopsided, but I think they're going to have to work really hard for this win. I really do.
Yeah. For a noon game against the Jets at home. I mean, this looked a lot different than it did maybe when the schedule first came out. Andy Herman, Pack-A-Day Podcast. I appreciate your time. Never more so than now. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Bart. Appreciate you having me on.